Stephen, of course, died a marvellous death, didn't he? What a death. I've always believed that great men should die great deaths. They shouldn't just fade away in a hospital bed somewhere. They've lived great lives, and so it's very fitting that they go out with a bang too, because that's the way they've lived their lives. To the full. They have no fear of death. Those who've got confidence in God don't fear death. What is death? It's a sleep. It's not really even death. It's only temporary. Real death, of course, is another matter. From my experience, by the way, only those who've resolved the real death issue can die peacefully with the loss of this body, which is nothing. And so Stephen died a great death. Look at 59. They went on stoning Stephen as he called upon the Lord. I love that statement, don't you? Imagine those stones hitting him. And these are not little stones. They're picking up boulders and throwing them at him. And as they're landing on his body, what's he doing? He calls upon the Lord and says, Lord Jesus, receive my spirit. But then he goes one step further. Falling on his knees now, no doubt he's getting weaker, he cried out with a loud voice, Lord, do not hold this sin against them. Isn't that beautiful? That is so powerful to do that. To die like that. What an impact it must have made on those who were watching. Do you think it made an impression on Saul? Well, you better believe it. Saul had never witnessed anything like this in his whole life. And here's a man dying with dignity, dying with courage, dying without fear and intimidation. I remember very well when I was pastoring in Las Vegas, one of our school teachers there, in fact he was teaching my oldest son at the time. I think he was the 6th grade teacher or something. He was at home with his wife and he had a fatal heart attack. And his wife was holding him and he fell down to his knees and he said to her, he must have known, he said, I've only got a few minutes. So he said, don't call 911, just stay with me. And he fell down on his knees and he began to pray. His wife told me this story herself. And she said she could hardly believe it as her husband opened his mouth and began to pray. Do you know what he prayed for? She said he listed all the children in his class, including your son. I thought, wow. And she said he called them by name and he invoked the blessing of God on their lives, saying he would not be able to continue to shape them. And she said then he smiled and he went to sleep. Do you think I had a lot of joy in conducting that funeral? I've never had a more joyful time, if I could say that, in conducting a funeral. There was so much praise. Several members of his own family were healed just through the funeral service. I run into them periodically. They remind me about it. They said, that was the most positive funeral. I said, I felt it myself. Because here's a man who lived what he believed, and dying was not the end of that, not at all. He was just simply going into the arms of Jesus to be awakened and continue on with the same relationship that he already had with Jesus Christ. You know that it's all about relationships, don't you? Salvation is about relationships. It's not all the knowledge you've got. It's not your ability to defend all your doctrines. Salvation is all about knowing Jesus.